It was a calm evening in a small, softly lit restaurant on the edge of the city, the kind of place where people came to unwind after work, talk quietly over their meals, or sit by themselves and listen to the faint music playing in the background. Behind the counter moved a young woman who seemed to never stop, taking orders, carrying plates, and smiling at everyone even when she was clearly tired. Her name was Lily. Lily had been working at the restaurant for almost 2 years. She was known for her patience and kindness. Customers liked her because she always remembered what they ordered last time, and coworkers liked her because she never complained. Yet behind her calm smile, she carried a quiet sadness that few ever noticed. The restaurant had a piano in the corner, an old upright one with a few scratches but a warm sound. Sometimes on weekends a hired musician came to play soft tunes that filled the room. Whenever that happened, Lily's steps would slow just a little. Her eyes would drift toward the piano, watching the musician's hands move across the keys. It wasn't jealousy. It was longing, something deep inside her that stirred every time those notes danced in the air. No one really paid attention to that look in her eyes. Most people saw Lily as just a waitress, someone who worked hard but lived a simple life. What they didn't know was that years ago she used to play the piano herself. She had learned as a child, sitting for hours on a worn-out bench in a small apartment her family once lived in. Her father had bought her a second-hand keyboard even though money was tight. He believed she had a gift, but life didn't go as planned. After her father passed away, everything changed. Bills piled up, her mother started working double shifts, and Lily had to help take care of her younger brother. The lessons stopped and the piano was sold. The dream faded slowly like a song that ends mid-note. She grew up, took whatever job she could find, and learned to hide that part of herself. Now, years later, every time she heard the piano in the restaurant, that memory came back. It reminded her of a version of herself she no longer believed she could be. One night, near closing time, only a few customers were left. The soft music from the speakers had stopped, and the restaurant felt unusually quiet. Lily began wiping down the tables, humming softly under her breath. The piano stood silently in the corner, its cover half open. Something about the stillness of the moment pulled her toward it. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Her coworkers were in the kitchen, cleaning up for the night. Slowly, she walked over to the piano. She ran her fingers gently over the keys, brushing off a thin layer of dust. For a few seconds, she just stood there, listening to the silence. Then, almost without thinking, she pressed a single key. A soft note filled the room. She pressed another, and another, forming a small melody that sounded like a whisper from her past. She closed her eyes and let her fingers move on their own. It wasn't perfect. She stumbled over a few notes, but the feeling was there. For that brief moment, she wasn't a tired waitress anymore. She was the little girl her father had once encouraged, the one who used to dream of playing for people who truly listened. Then suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She froze, her hands stopping in midair. It was the new restaurant manager, Mr. Gray, who had joined just a few weeks ago. He was known for being strict and didn't like his employees doing anything outside their assigned roles. He looked at her with a frown. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp. Lily stepped back from the piano, her heart racing. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly. "I was just cleaning it." Mr. Gray glanced at the piano, then back at her. "Next time, leave the instruments alone. They're not for staff to play with. Finish your shift and go home." Lily nodded quietly and went back to her work. She didn't argue or explain. She never did. But inside, a small part of her ached. It wasn't the manager's words that hurt. It was the reminder that maybe she really was just a waitress now. Maybe the dream she once had didn't belong in her world anymore. The next few days went by like normal. Orders came and went. Customers laughed, complained, tipped, and left. Life moved on. Yet every time she passed the piano, she couldn't help but glance at it. Sometimes she imagined what it would be like to sit down and play freely again, without fear of being judged. One afternoon, one of her coworkers, a cheerful young woman named Nina, noticed Lily staring at the piano again. "You like that thing, huh?" she teased, wiping her hands on her apron. Lily smiled shyly. "Yeah, I used to play a little. A long time ago." "Really?" Nina's eyes lit up. "No way! You never told anyone that. You should totally play sometime." Lily shook her head quickly. No, I'm out of practice." "And I don't think the manager would like it." Nina rolled her eyes. Forget him. You should do it when he's not around. I bet you're good, Lily laughed softly. Not anymore. I haven't touched a real piano in years. But that night the thought wouldn't leave her mind. Lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, remembering how music used to make her feel alive. The rhythm, the emotion, the connection. It was something no job could replace. She missed it more than she wanted to admit. The next evening, as the restaurant got busy, a small family walked in. Parents with their young daughter, around 8 or 9 years old. They sat near the piano. The little girl looked at it curiously and asked her parents if someone would play. They smiled and told her maybe later, but Lily overheard it. Throughout the night, the girl kept glancing at the piano. At one point, Lily stopped by their table to serve dessert. The girl looked up at her and asked, "Can you play the piano, miss?" The question caught Lily off guard. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. "I used to," she replied softly. The girl's eyes widened. "Then why don't you play now?" Lily smiled a little sadly. "Sometimes life makes us stop doing the things we love. But maybe one day I will again." The girl nodded seriously, as if she understood something far beyond her age. "You should," she said. "You look like someone who'd play beautifully." That simple sentence stayed with Lily for days. It echoed in her mind even as she went about her routine. Maybe the child was right. Maybe it wasn't too late to play again, even just for herself. But in her heart, she knew it wouldn't be easy. The restaurant was no place for dreams, and she had bills to pay, a brother still in school, and no time for hobbies. Still, as she passed the piano each night, she couldn't help but imagine her fingers gliding over those keys once more, bringing life to the quiet restaurant. She didn't know it yet. But her quiet longing was about to be noticed. The piano that had stood silent for months would soon become the stage for something no one expected. Least of all, the following week passed quietly, but something had changed inside Lily. She tried to focus on work as usual, but her heart wasn't in the same place anymore. Every time she walked past the piano, she felt a soft pull, like a whisper calling her name. She pretended not to hear it, but deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore it forever. Her coworker Nina noticed the change. "You've been daydreaming a lot lately," she said one morning as they prepared the tables for lunch service. Lily smiled faintly. "Maybe I just need more sleep." Nina leaned against the counter. "Or maybe you need to play that piano again." Lily laughed softly. "You really don't give up, do you?" "Not when I know I'm right," Nina said with a grin. "I can see it in your eyes every time you look at it." "You miss it?" Lily sighed, her voice quiet. "I do, but it's not that simple. I haven't practiced in years, and even if I wanted to, the manager wouldn't allow it." Nina waved her hand dismissively. "Forget him. Play after closing time. No one needs to know." Lily didn't answer. She just smiled politely. But that suggestion stayed in her mind all day. That night, after the last customer left and the chairs were stacked on the tables, Lily found herself alone in the dining area. The lights were dim, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Her hands were tired from carrying plates and trays all day, but still her eyes turned toward the piano in the corner. She hesitated. Her heart was pounding for no reason at all. It was silly, she thought. Just a few notes wouldn't hurt anyone. She glanced toward the kitchen. No one was there. Slowly she walked over and lifted the cover. The keys looked old but clean, waiting for someone to bring them to life. She sat down and pressed a key gently. The sound was warm, soft, and strangely comforting. Then she played another note and another until a small tune began to form. Her fingers moved slowly at first, unsure, like someone remembering a language they hadn't spoken in years. But then the melody began to flow and her body relaxed. Her mind drifted back to her childhood. She saw herself sitting beside her father, his hand resting gently on her shoulder as he watched her play. He always smiled when she played something right, and even when she made mistakes, he'd say, "That's how you learn, sweetheart. Every wrong note brings you closer to the right one." She could almost hear his voice again now, echoing softly in the back of her mind. Tears filled her eyes, but she kept playing. What Lily didn't realize was that someone had stepped into the restaurant while she was lost in the music. It was Mr. Gray, the manager. He had returned to grab a forgotten document from his office. He stopped near the entrance, surprised by the sound. He watched quietly as Lily played, her eyes closed, her face calm and peaceful in a way he had never seen before. The music filled the empty restaurant, wrapping the air in something pure and gentle. For a moment, even Mr. Gray forgot he was supposed to be angry. But when the song ended and Lily looked up, startled to see him standing there, the spell broke. I'm sorry, she stammered, quickly standing up. I didn't know anyone was here. He held up a hand to stop her. That was unexpected, he said. His tone wasn't harsh this time, just uncertain. I'm really sorry, she said again, her eyes downcast. I won't touch it again. Mr. Gray hesitated as if he wanted to say something more, but then he just nodded. It's late. Go home and rest. She nodded and left quickly, embarrassed. But something in his eyes before he turned away made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had seen more than just a waitress in that moment. The next few days went on quietly again. Lily went back to serving tables, greeting customers, and keeping her head down. But this time there was a lightness to her steps. Late at night, when the restaurant was empty, she started sneaking in a few minutes of playing, never long, just enough to feel the keys under her fingers and the music in her heart again. One evening, a small group of customers came in, regulars who worked nearby. They were kind people who always chatted with Lily and left good tips. One of them, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, noticed the piano in the corner and asked, "Do you still have live music here?" "I haven't heard anyone play in months," Lily smiled politely. "Not lately. The owner hasn't hired anyone recently." "That's a shame," the woman said. "This place has such a lovely atmosphere. It deserves music." Lily wanted to tell her she could play, but she stopped herself. No one would believe it. To them, she was just the girl who carried trays. Later that night, when the same woman passed by the counter to pay her bill, she noticed Lily's hands as she handed back the change. "You have piano hands," the woman said suddenly. Lily blinked in surprise. "Piano hands?" "Yes," the woman smiled. "Long fingers, gentle touch. My sister used to play and she had hands just like yours." Lily didn't know what to say. She just smiled shyly and thanked her. But that one comment lit a small spark in her heart again. That weekend, when she returned for her shift, she saw a poster on the restaurant door. The management had agreed to host a small dinner event the following week. It was for a local charity. Artists, business owners, and guests were invited. There would be music, food, and speeches. Everyone was talking about it. "Maybe they'll hire a live band," Nina said excitedly as they set up the tables. "Wouldn't that be fun?" "Yeah," Lily replied softly, though she couldn't help but glance at the piano again. A few days later, during lunch, the manager made an announcement. "The event is confirmed," he said. "We'll have over 30 guests. Everything has to be perfect," the staff nodded. But then one of them asked, "Who's handling the music?" Mr. Gray frowned slightly. "We're still looking. The pianist we usually hire isn't available. I might have to call someone else." Before he could finish, Nina spoke up suddenly. "Lily can play the piano." Lily's head snapped up, eyes wide. "Nina," she whispered under her breath. Everyone turned to look at her. The manager raised an eyebrow. "Is that true?" Lily hesitated, feeling her face flush. "A little," she said quietly. "I used to, but it's been years." The manager crossed his arms. "We don't have time for games. We need a professional." Nina looked annoyed. "You should hear her before you say that." Mr. Gray looked from Nina to Lily, then finally said, "Fine. Play something after closing tonight. Let's see what you can do." Lily's heart started to race. She didn't know whether to feel excited or terrified. That evening, as the last customer left, she sat down at the piano, her hands trembling slightly. The staff stayed behind to watch. She took a deep breath and began to play a soft tune, something simple yet full of emotion. The moment she started, the chatter stopped. Her fingers found the rhythm easily this time, as if the piano remembered her. The sound floated through the quiet restaurant, wrapping around everyone like a warm blanket. When she finished, no one spoke for a few seconds. Then Nina clapped, grinning proudly. "Told you," she said. Even Mr. Gray, who always seemed hard to impress, nodded slowly. "Not bad," he said. "You'll play at the event." Lily looked up in shock. "Me?" He nodded again. "Yes, it'll save us from hiring someone else. Don't make me regret it." And with that, he left the room. Nina rushed over and hugged her. "See, I knew it. You're going to be amazing." But Lily wasn't sure whether to feel happy or scared. She hadn't performed for anyone in years. The thought of playing in front of strangers made her nervous. Still, as she looked at the piano one last time before leaving that night, Something inside her whispered that this was meant to happen. She didn't know it yet, but that one performance would change her life forever. The days leading up to the event passed faster than Lily expected. Each morning she woke up with a mix of excitement and fear. It had been so long since she had played for anyone, and now she was supposed to perform in front of a crowd filled with important people. She kept asking herself why she had agreed, but deep down she knew why. It was the chance her heart had been waiting for, even if her mind wasn't ready. At the restaurant, the staff was busy preparing for the big evening. Decorations were being put up, the tables polished until they shined, and fresh flowers were placed on every corner. The whole place looked more beautiful than ever before. The manager was walking around, giving instructions in his usual serious voice, making sure every detail was perfect. Lily tried to focus on her regular duties, but her thoughts kept drifting toward the piano. After closing each night, she practiced quietly for an hour or two. Sometimes Nina stayed behind, sitting near the counter and listening with a gentle smile. "You've still got it," she would whisper every time. Those words gave Lily courage. Still, doubt followed her everywhere. What if she made a mistake? What if her nerves ruined everything? What if people laughed? She had seen how harsh the world could be when someone tried to rise above their place. The night before the event, she couldn't sleep. She sat by her small window, staring at the quiet street outside. Her old keyboard stood in the corner of the room, covered with a thin cloth. She hadn't touched it in years, but she lifted the cover and pressed a few keys. The sound was weak and out of tune, but it reminded her of where she started. She smiled faintly and whispered to herself, "You can do this. Just play like you used to." The next day came with a mix of sunshine and nerves. Everyone at the restaurant was on edge, making sure the food, lights, and seating were perfect. By evening, guests began to arrive. Men in suits, women in elegant dresses, soft music playing in the background. The place glowed with warm light and gentle chatter. Lily moved between tables, serving drinks and smiling politely. Her apron was replaced with a simple white dress the manager had given her for the performance. She looked different, more confident, even if her heart was beating fast. As the evening went on, laughter filled the air. Plates clinked, glasses were raised, and the restaurant buzzed with life. In one corner, a group of local artists talked about their upcoming projects. In another, a few business owners discussed plans for charity donations. Everyone seemed at ease. Everyone except Lily. She stood near the piano, her hands clasped tightly together. She could feel the tension in her chest. The manager approached her quietly. "You're up next," he said. "After the main course is served." She nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." He looked at her for a moment, his usual sternness softening just a little. "Don't overthink it. Just play." Then he walked away. When it was finally time, the lights dimmed slightly. The chatter softened as the manager stepped forward to make a brief announcement. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said. "We appreciate your support for this charity event. And now we have something special for you. A short piano performance by one of our very own." The guests looked around, curious. A few whispered to each other, wondering who he meant. Then he gestured toward Lily. "Please welcome Lily, our waitress, who will be playing for you tonight." There was a brief pause, followed by polite applause. Some smiled encouragingly, while others looked surprised. Lily took a deep breath and walked toward the piano, her legs trembling slightly. She could feel dozens of eyes following her. She sat down, her fingers hovering above the keys. For a moment, she couldn't move. The noise in her mind grew louder. What if she failed? But then she remembered her father's words from long ago. Every wrong note brings you closer to the right one. She closed her eyes, took one slow breath, and began to play. The first few notes were gentle, almost shy, like a whisper. Then slowly the melody began to bloom. The sound filled the restaurant, wrapping around every table, reaching even the corners where people had been deep in conversation. One by one, they fell silent. Lily's fingers glided over the keys with grace and emotion. She wasn't just playing music, she was telling a story of loss, hope, and rediscovery. Every note carried a piece of her heart, and it showed. The people listened closely. Some leaned forward, others closed their eyes. Even the waiters stopped for a moment to watch. The kitchen door swung open slightly, and the chefs peeked through, drawn by the sound. The melody grew stronger, more passionate. Her body swayed with the rhythm as if the music had taken control. It was as if she was no longer in that restaurant. She was somewhere far away, where only she and the piano existed. By the time the song reached its final note, the room was completely still. Then came the applause, soft at first, then louder until it filled the space like thunder. People stood up, clapping and smiling. Some even cheered. Lily looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She had expected polite appreciation, maybe a few nods, but this was real admiration. She saw faces full of emotion, people touched by something they hadn't expected to feel that night. She stood up slowly and bowed her head. Her heart raced, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from joy. When she looked toward the manager, he was standing near the counter, arms crossed, but even he couldn't hide the faint smile on his face. He nodded once, a small gesture, but it meant everything to her. As she walked back to the kitchen, guests kept stopping her to compliment her performance. "That was beautiful," one woman said. "You play with such emotion." Another guest, a man in a gray suit, said thoughtfully, "You're wasted as a waitress. You belong on a stage." Lily thanked them quietly, her face glowing with gratitude. She couldn't believe what was happening. All those years of hiding her talent, and now, for the first time, people were truly seeing her. Later that night, after the event ended and the guests had gone, the restaurant felt quiet again. Lily stayed behind to help clean up. The piano sat in the corner, still gleaming under the soft lights. As she walked past it, the manager approached. "You did well tonight," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, still unsure if he really meant it. He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Someone left a card for you. Said they wanted to talk about a performance opportunity." He handed her a small business card with a name and number on it. Lily looked at it, her heart skipping a beat. "A performance?" "Yes," he said. "Apparently one of the guests runs a local arts center. They're looking for new talent for their weekend shows." She didn't know what to say. "Do you think I should call them?" He shrugged, though his tone softened. "If music makes you this happy, I don't see why not." For the first time since he had become manager, she saw genuine kindness in his expression. Maybe he wasn't as cold as everyone thought. That night, as she walked home under the quiet sky, Lily held the card tightly in her hand. The streetlights flickered softly and the sound of her shoes echoed on the pavement. She couldn't stop smiling. The world felt different now, brighter, bigger, full of possibilities she had long stopped believing in. She didn't know where this new path would lead, but for the first time in years, she felt alive. The waitress who once cleaned tables and served coffee had reminded herself of who she truly was: a pianist, a dreamer, and someone whose music could touch hearts. And this was only the beginning. The day of the community concert arrived faster than Lily could believe. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked toward the small auditorium, the business card still tucked safely in her pocket. The streets were busy with people, cars honking in the distance, but her mind was focused only on the music that waited for her inside. She had never performed for a crowd this large before. The restaurant had been one thing, a familiar place with friendly faces. But this was different, an audience of strangers, people who had come specifically to listen to music. Her heart beat wildly in her chest, a mixture of excitement and fear. Backstage, she watched the other performers prepare. Some were experienced musicians, confident in their movements, chatting with each other and laughing easily. Lily felt small in comparison, her nerves twisting in her stomach. She adjusted her dress, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "I can do this. I can do this." A woman approached her, introducing herself as the organizer of the event. "You're our special guest tonight," she said kindly. "We've heard about your talent. Just remember, play from your heart. That's what matters most." Lily nodded, swallowing hard. She had practiced the piece several times since the last performance at the restaurant, but she knew practice could never erase the nerves entirely. The sound of the audience waiting just beyond the stage made her hands clammy. When it was her turn, the stage manager motioned for her to go on. She walked slowly, her shoes clicking softly against the wooden floor. The lights were bright and the auditorium felt enormous. Every eye seemed to be on her, waiting for the first note. She approached the grand piano at center stage. It gleamed under the lights, its polished black surface reflecting her face back at her. She paused, taking in the sight of all those people seated before her. Some were smiling, some curious, others completely silent, waiting. Her fingers hovered above the keys. For a moment, fear threatened to take over. What if she failed? What if she forgot the notes? What if she wasn't as good as she remembered? She closed her eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. Then she remembered her father's words. Every wrong note brings you closer to the right one. She had carried that thought through her practice and through her first hesitant steps back at the restaurant. Now it gave her courage. Slowly, she pressed the first key. A soft, delicate note filled the auditorium. She played the next, then the next, building a gentle melody that grew with each passing moment. Her fingers moved confidently now, each note carrying emotion, her story woven into every sound. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. Conversation stopped, and even the soft rustling of programs faded into silence. Every person listened, captivated by the delicate strength of her music. Lily's eyes remained closed, letting her hands guide her, letting her heart lead the melody. The music rose and fell like waves on a calm sea. At times it was soft and tender, like a whisper of memory. At others it became strong and bold, echoing feelings she had buried for years: grief, longing, hope, and joy. It was more than just notes on a page. It was her life, her emotions. Her soul poured into every chord. A few people in the front row had tears in their eyes, moved by something they could not explain. Others sat silently, holding their breath, completely immersed in the sound. Even seasoned musicians backstage watched in awe, realizing this was no ordinary performance. As she neared the end of the piece, Lily allowed herself to smile slightly. She could feel the music connecting with the people around her, bridging the gap between performer and listener. Every note seemed to reach them directly, as if each key she pressed carried a message meant only for them. The final chord rang out and lingered in the air. For a few seconds, the room was completely still. Then, as if a dam had broken, the audience erupted into applause. The sound was thunderous, echoing off the walls, filling the auditorium with praise and admiration. People stood clapping and cheering, some even whistling in amazement. Lily sat frozen for a moment, overwhelmed. She had expected polite applause, maybe a few nods. But this was something else. She looked up, seeing faces shining with excitement and gratitude. Strangers she would never meet again had been touched by her music. Her heart swelled with a mixture of disbelief and joy. The organizer of the event came onto the stage, smiling widely. "That was incredible," she said. "You have a gift that touches hearts. People will remember this performance for a long time." Backstage, some of the other musicians came to congratulate her. "I've never seen anything like that," one said. "You have a natural connection to the piano. It's rare to see someone play with such emotion." Even the piano tuner, who had been adjusting the instrument before her performance, approached her with a smile. "You brought this piano to life tonight," he said. "It's not often you see someone who can do that." As Lily walked off stage, her legs still trembling slightly, she felt a rush of warmth and accomplishment. She had faced her fear, shared her gift, and seen the impact it had on others. It was more than she had ever hoped for. Later, as she packed her things and prepared to leave, a man approached her. He was neatly dressed, holding a small notebook in his hands. "I'm a music producer," he said. "I heard you tonight, and I have to say I've never heard anything like it. I would love to talk to you about performing at some upcoming events." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. She could hardly believe it. "Me, really?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said kindly. "Your music has something special. It's raw, emotional, and powerful. People respond to it because it comes from your heart. I'd like to help you share it with more people." For the first time in years, Lily felt the full weight of possibility. She had dreamed of playing for audiences, of sharing music that mattered, but she had never imagined it could happen so soon. She felt a quiet gratitude, thinking of all the small steps that had led her here: the piano at the restaurant, the encouragement of her coworker, the support from strangers, and even the doubts she had learned to overcome. Walking home that night, she felt lighter than she had in years. The city lights reflected off the wet streets, and the cool night air brushed her face. She couldn't stop smiling. Her heart was full, her mind buzzing with ideas, and her soul felt alive. Lily realized that she had found something more than just an opportunity to perform. She had found herself again, the version of her who loved music without fear, who believed in the power of a single note, and who understood that passion could change lives, not just her own, but the lives of everyone who listened. That night, as she lay in bed, She thought about her father and all the moments she had shared with him at the piano. She whispered a quiet thank you, feeling his presence with her in the music, guiding her hands even from afar. She didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain. The music inside her could no longer be hidden. It had been unveiled and it would never be silenced again, and so, the waitress who once carried trays and served meals had become a pianist who touched hearts, proving that sometimes, life's most extraordinary moments come from the simplest beginnings. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she knew she could face it with courage, with hope, and with the music that had always been a part of her soul. After the community concert, Lily's life changed in ways she had never imagined. The night she played at the auditorium stayed with her, echoing in her mind like a gentle, persistent melody. The applause, the cheers, and the tears of strangers had touched her heart in a way nothing else ever had. It was as if the world had opened its arms to her, finally recognizing the music she had carried silently for so many years. The music producer who had approached her that night called the next morning. He wanted to discuss a series of local performances and even offered to help her record a few tracks. Lily listened carefully, her hands trembling with excitement. The idea of performing for more people, of sharing her music beyond the restaurant, felt almost unreal. She agreed without hesitation. Word of her talent began to spread quickly. A video of her restaurant performance recorded by one of the guests had gone online and started circulating on social media. People were amazed that someone who seemed so ordinary could have such extraordinary talent. Comments poured in, praising her emotion, her technique, and the sheer beauty of her music. Strangers wrote messages of encouragement, telling her she had inspired them to pursue their own dreams. The restaurant that had once been her entire world suddenly felt different. Customers who had never noticed her before now stopped by just to watch her play. The regulars smiled knowingly, as if they had always known she was special. Even the manager, who had once been strict and skeptical, approached her one afternoon with a small, approving nod. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "Keep going." Lily continued working at the restaurant for a while, but now each day felt lighter. She moved through her tasks with a quiet confidence, her heart full of purpose. In the evenings, she practiced at the piano, experimenting with new melodies and revisiting pieces from her past. Music became more than a hobby again. It was her life, her way of expressing everything she had kept inside for years. One weekend, she performed at a local arts festival. The stage was small, but the audience was eager and attentive. She remembered her first hesitant notes at the restaurant and realized how far she had come. Her hands moved across the keys with certainty now, her fingers carrying not just skill but emotion, experience, and a story only she could tell. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the music that seemed to flow effortlessly from her soul. Some closed their eyes, others smiled, and a few wiped tears from their cheeks. After she finished, the applause was thunderous. People called out her name, some even standing to cheer. Lily's heart swelled with a mixture of joy and disbelief. She had shared herself in a way she never thought possible, and the response was overwhelming. With each new performance, her confidence grew. She began performing at small events, charity functions, and local concerts. People recognized her from the viral video, and soon invitations started coming from nearby cities. Each stage she played on felt like a step closer to the life she had once dreamed of, the one she thought had been lost forever. Despite her rising success, Lily remained humble. She never forgot where she had started, serving tables in a quiet restaurant, dreaming of music late at night. She continued to visit the restaurant, sometimes just to sit at the piano in the empty dining room and play for herself. It was a reminder of how far she had come and the journey that had brought her here. One evening, after a long day of performances, she returned to the restaurant to find a small group gathered for a casual dinner. They had heard she would be there and asked if she might play a few notes. She laughed softly, a little nervous but willing. As her fingers touched the keys, the familiar warmth returned, and the soft melody filled the room. The diners listened, enchanted, and for a moment, the restaurant felt like home again. Her life was not without challenges. There were days when she felt exhausted from travel and performances, days when nerves crept back in before a show, and moments of self-doubt. But each time she remembered the joy of that first piano performance at the restaurant, the feeling of music flowing through her and touching others. It reminded her why she had chosen this path and why she would continue, no matter how difficult it seemed. Lily also found herself reconnecting with her family in ways she hadn't imagined. Her younger brother, who had grown up watching her struggle, now looked at her with pride and admiration. Her mother, who had sacrificed so much, was amazed by her daughter's courage and talent. They celebrated each new success together, often listening to her play late into the evening, sharing stories, laughter, and tears. Over time, Lily began to understand that her talent was not just for herself. It was a gift meant to be shared, to inspire others, and to remind people that dreams could be revived, even after years of doubt or hardship. She received letters and messages from people who had been touched by her music. Some had lost hope. Others had given up on their own passions, and they thanked her for showing them that it was never too late to start again. One evening, after returning from a particularly large performance, she sat alone at the piano in her small apartment. She closed her eyes and let her fingers move over the keys freely, without planning, without hesitation. The music flowed naturally, a reflection of her journey, her growth, and her newfound confidence. It was a melody of triumph and hope, of challenges faced and dreams reclaimed. As the notes lingered in the air, she realized that her life had changed completely. The shy, quiet waitress who had once believed she had lost her gift was gone. In her place was a woman who had rediscovered her voice, embraced her passion, and shared it with the world. She had transformed not only her life, but also the lives of those who heard her music. And yet, despite the applause, the opportunities, and the recognition, Lily remained grounded. She knew that her success was not about fame or praise, it was about connection. It was about the power of music to heal, inspire, and bring people together. Every note she played carried a piece of her heart, and in return it touched the hearts of everyone who listened. Months later, she returned to the restaurant where her journey had truly begun. The piano in the corner looked the same, yet everything had changed. She sat down, her fingers brushing the keys, and began to play. This time she wasn't nervous, and she wasn't performing for anyone else. She was playing for herself, for the memory of her father, and for the dreams that had never truly left her. The music filled the quiet restaurant once more, gentle, strong, and full of life. She smiled as she played, knowing that this was just the beginning. There would be more performances, more opportunities, and more people to touch with her music. But in that moment, it didn't matter. She was home, she was herself, and she was free. For Lily, the journey had started with a simple touch of the piano, a secret kept in silence for years. It had grown into something extraordinary, something that changed her world and the world of everyone who listened. She had proven that no dream is ever truly lost and that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. As the final note echoed and faded, Lily closed her eyes, feeling the quiet triumph of a journey completed and a life transformed. The applause was no longer needed. She had discovered the greatest music of all, the music of courage, hope, and the unwavering belief in herself. Her story had begun in a small restaurant with only a piano and a dream, and it had led her to a world full of light, love, and endless possibilities. And she knew, deep in her heart, that the music would never stop.